Ben, I'll need you to ask questions for 2 people now that you're with your opponent out here right now.
Okay.
And River and well, David, you know to ask questions, but River, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in as well. So this looks like it was Andrew Hall versus playing black and Ben taking white.
Yep.
Okay.
I would ask questions, but most of it goes over my head. So.
If I'm going too fast, let me know, because you know, these games are going to be put on YouTube. So if you want to slow down at any point, please let me know too.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
So everything looks great so far. Yeah, no comments really. All just really solid moves. I would say this E12 move is maybe the first mistake.
It's
probably
a little
just,
slow, right?
It's a little slow. It's also like still pretty easily invadable. Yeah, there's plenty of Aji that exists here. So if I were to play anything here, it would probably be here if I were to play locally, but the first moves that stick out to me are something like this. These are the first things that stick out to me. And so you get to kind of protect here in a way that is maybe a little bit better than just playing at E12. You know, something like that. You know, you're probably, I think your eyebrow looked to have raised when I played at G16, or maybe when I played at F17, Ben. I don't know if you noticed.
No,
that.
I've seen this. I've seen this
Okay.
just like before.
Yeah. So
I was just trying to remember it, but yeah, because you have the cutting point at E18 if you have a Atari.
Exactly. So white can never really play here because it has the weakness obviously at H18. But unfortunately, there's obviously the cut here. So kind of like, okay, the cut doesn't really do too much. And the other part of that is white can play here, Atari play here, and then there's a ko here.
Oh, it's even a ko because you have the F19. Okay, yeah, I forgot about that.
So because of that, white really
Could
never
you run
gets
through
with
that
Atari.
again? I'm
Sure.
I
So,
saw that and I was like, hold on, my brain exploded for a moment.
So black attaches to G16, white plays here. Black will typically play the F17, even though it seems like black should play at G15. Black
H15
actually
also a move.
H15.
That's H17.
Sorry, H15.
I thought this was a move for some reason.
I think it is. I think it's just going to revert back.
Oh, okay.
There are some instances where white would probably play like this.
I thought after F16, black just blocks it F15 and then allows the capture.
You're saying here?
Yeah, and then the capture.
Oh, this would be much too good for white.
Okay.
Because black still has the cutting points here and here, and white's protected its weakness over here, right? So that'd be much too good. No, but what would probably happen if you played this way is it would probably revert, right? I think that's probably the case. That said, depending on the game, it isn't impossible that white pushes through, black plays here, and you get a trade happening.
Okay.
So depending on the game, that could happen as well. But I think I would probably prefer white in this position, even though black gets a really large corner. This is a nice side for white. It also breaks through that territory that black was mapping out here. So this wouldn't be something that I want to do. So again, you would expect black to play at G15, but because white can never Atari at G15 because of the weakness at E18,
it becomes a ko.
It becomes a ko, yeah. So if white plays incorrectly, Atari's here, black connects, white has to come back and play here. We can agree with that. There's obviously the cut move at H15, which is quite nice for black because it's going to isolate this stone and work well with these stones down at E7 and E5, or sorry, E7 and C7. And then the other part of it is that black has the cut here. If white tries to connect back, black will Atari, white will connect, and then black gets to Hane here. And if white tries to play here, black has a ko over here. Make sense?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And then, but there's nothing big enough for that ko, is there, in the beginning of the game?
Right now, any sort of moves here, is going to be advantageous for black, I think. But even if black
Okay.
chooses not to play the ko, black could also just choose to play this, which is obviously still a good result for black. So black has two options, either the ko or just play c18. So so for that reason, black would probably leave it right now. And probably
And
just
then
come back and play
leave the
mage.
call when it's worth it more, right?
Maybe, yeah. But certainly black could play here right now too, and this would be perfectly fine. I think either one is okay. But that said, the idea being is that this is probably the preferred move as opposed to something on this side, because we can expand up higher and not have to worry about being Atari'd here. Sorry, I got a little bit in the weeds there, but
Well, I really appreciate that because I don't think I would have ever realized the E18 move until someone played it against me. So
no worries. So this is fine. Yeah, this all makes sense. I would probably extend one more here. You don't typically see such a close extension here, and I think the reason for that is you typically treat these stones as expendable in this type of situation. I know you didn't play it, but usually when white plays something like this, black will play something like this, and you can, or excuse me, white plays something like this, black plays something like this, and these two stones become a lot smaller. And now black can run out with these stones. So that's typically what you'll see here. When you play here, it's very clear. I want these two stones to live. Problem is, now they're heavy, and now you actually have to care about them. And if you play here now, like you didn't really get any. Even if you and white plays elsewhere, and you come back, you didn't get much territory out of this. Where if you change the variation a little bit, and you play here, white plays here. Black jumps out, or maybe something like this, excuse me. Black jumps out, white plays here. Later on, you can come back and actually make a little bit of territory out of this group. So probably a small mistake here. It's hard to say whether this is a good move, because it's hard to say whether you'll be able to utilize these two stones effectively. What I would think here is that black would give up the corner and come and attack these two stones in some sort of way.
Okay.
And so maybe something like this.
Yeah.
And so now, that's kind of making good use of these stones over here, right? You wouldn't,
Okay.
If you played in the normal way, something like this, I think this would probably be a little bit too advantageous for white.
Okay.
Like it's a thick wall here, black does get territory, but I think this is white using its stones pretty effectively.
I didn't even see the move at Q15, so I don't think I played off here.
I mean, there's reasons why you wouldn't play it. Like black can consider playing here.
Okay.
So it's not a guaranteed something you would play. Even if all you did was just play like this, this is also fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a perfectly playable result.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, this is maybe you do it now, right? Maybe this is the time where you do it.
Okay.
Quick question on that.
Mhm.
I'm wondering sort of what you look for if you ask the question when white makes a move like that. Should black give up the corner? Is it the fact that there's those white stones that are attackable that you might build strength for? Like, what's the clue that maybe giving up the corner is better than keeping the corner?
I try to look at the effectiveness of stones. And so what do I mean by that, right? Like, and maybe this position's a little bit complicated, so I'm going to go back a little bit. Looking at the effectiveness of the E12 stone, I'm not really happy with the stone's position, because I know that there's a weakness here, a weakness here. This isn't a stone that I would want to be here given the variations that have occurred or could occur, right? And so for me, when I'm looking at this position here, if I play just this kind of standard way that I think you would expect to see here, these stones are doing a good job. These stones are giving white a little bit of outward influence and reducing the effectiveness of black's corner. right? I would be unhappy with this result as white because I feel like I would be giving black more than it should get. Sorry, I would feel like I'm giving white more than it should get. And so for me, that's when I think, okay, let me see if there's something else I can do. And so I say, okay, well, obviously this move is aiming at either getting the side territory here or the corner. What happens if I decide to give up the corner? And I say, okay, well, I'll give up the corner, right? We'll make a small corner points here. And now I can use my stones down here a little bit more effectively to actually get an attack on these 2 weak stones. So for me, I look at how effective my stones are being used. If I feel like my stones are over concentrated, if I do one variation, I'm going to see if there's another variation or if I can leave it and do something else later. Bless you. So, I think a good rule of thumb is when you're ahead and the variations look good for you, you don't need to get creative. It's when you're behind and the variations, or not necessarily behind, it's when the variations don't look good for you, or you feel like your stones are not being used effectively, that you start looking at like, what should I be doing instead? The games where you're winning from the beginning, usually you just play a really simple game. The games where all of your stones are being used ineffectively, you have to get creative to try to figure out a way to use them properly. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
And kind of in a similar vein, would I really want this stone at L17 right now, or would I prefer to have something like this, which maybe makes a little bit better use of these 2 stones here and the stone over here, right? Because black's normal move is something like this. Now, like, let's take a look at.
Yeah, and you don't want the L17 stone in that scenario.
Exactly.
It's way over concentrated with the ones on the left. Okay.
Exactly. We're not going to play.
Yeah, you never play L17. Yeah.
We're going to play here now. So David, maybe to answer your question, also I use Tawari to figure out whether I need to play differently. Kind of reordering the moves to see if I'm going to come to the same conclusion.
And I think what you actually are illustrating, both with the E12 and the L17 stone, is it's always a temptation to use my thickness to try to make territory, which both those moves look like that's the principle that they're trying to use, instead of using your thickness to get your opponent to invade and attack it.
Exactly.
And so what I'm hearing is that, make more thickness instead of trying to turn your thickness into territory directly.
I don't think making more thickness is the right way of phrasing it.
But playing L17 more on the right makes that wall more solid and.
But there are times though when an L17 would be a good move, right? Like if this was all black stones over here, you'd want L17, right?
Yeah.
So I think I would change the way I phrase that. Like use thickness to get territory, use thickness to attack, and by attacking you get territory. So I think it's that second part that's really important.
Okay. Great.
The worst thing you can do is attack without having some sort of end game, or to attack for the sake of attacking, or attack because you think it's pushing your opponent out to the center. Because just because you're pushing your opponent out to the center doesn't mean you're getting anything.
That often happens.
This is very enlightening because they're all concepts that
I am much more of a concept teacher.
Well, I think it's helpful for me at least because I hear this and I go, you know what? This is how people usually beat me, but actually hearing it aloud is so much different.
Yeah. I think there is a fundamental difference between like a Q player mindset and a Don player mindset. Like there is it's not necessarily the reading abilities, because I think there's certainly like one Q or one Don players who can read similarly or do difficult road problems to me, but it's looking at the stone and trying to figure out its usefulness, and piecing it apart that I think it separates the Don from the Q. So we'll do.
Well, I have a long way to go.
I think we have a few more minutes left, so I'll go to more moves. So K4 looks okay. It's I guess it's hard to fault K3. I would be more, again, because white's pretty strong everywhere, I would be more inclined to maybe put a little bit of pressure on the stone.
Yeah. So I can describe why I thought, here's what I thought was that, if I don't play something like K3, black is going to play H3, and then if I respond in a natural way, I'm going to be super over concentrated. It's going to look extremely dumb.
Something like this.
Yeah, and this like just looks really dumb to me because I'm making 10 points of territory or something. Whereas if I play K3, I now have a complete base, and my opponent has probably some stones that are now attackable.
Yeah, I don't think it's an unreasonable line.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is probably, again, it's kind of hard to fault because it is mapping out territory here. But I think there is something to be said for the effectiveness of like an H6 stone, though, right?
Okay.
Because this group isn't alive yet, right?
Mhm.
Black still needs to run out, which means that you get to keep the pressure up on these stones, right?
Mhm.
So black runs out again, and now you have another attacking position here. You can come in, you have more
Mhm.
strength to play a move like E9 and break apart the territory. So attacking doesn't necessarily need to kill. It just needs to get you some sort of
Yeah.
compensation.
I just hated how the wall on like the G line and the wall on the D line looked next to each other.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Hopefully.
I get that. Like it's, that's why I was saying it's hard to say that K3 is a bad move.
Okay.
I think maybe M5 should just be at L4. Obviously, it feels weird to be so heavy here, but you don't want to like give your opponent a nice connection underneath because this is not a small number of territory, small amount of territory. So for that reason, I would probably just do a solid connection to prevent that L2 move. Okay, yeah, this is a really hard stone to attack and kind of goes back to why E12 was maybe a little bit questionable. Because if black plays something like this, there's plenty of stuff that can happen here for white to potentially live inside, but at the very least to force some weird connections on the outside. So for that reason, again, going back to why this E12 move was maybe questionable, there's so much Aji left over. And it's going to be, I would be hard pressed to figure out a good way to attack this stone. I might, if I were black, play something like this and come back over here, right? Again, it should be pretty simple for white to live here.